Do you know someone who thinks too much about everything? Someone who can't make a simple choice without imagining 100 bad outcomes? Maybe that person lies awake at night replaying mistakes, worrying about things that never happened, or obsessing over every small detail. They call it being careful, being responsible, being logical. But deep down, they know it isn't logic. It's fear wearing a smart disguise. And maybe that person is you. Overthinking drains your energy. It steals your confidence. It makes simple tasks feel impossible. But what if I told you the Japanese have a system that cuts through overthinking in a way that feels almost strange at first? A system that doesn't fight your mind, but resets it. This system comes from an old Zen philosophy used by monks, samurai, and modern creators. It's called Shoshin, and once you understand it, your mind won't work the same way again. Before we go deeper, take a moment to subscribe, like the video, and share your experience in the comments. Tell me where overthinking hits you the hardest. Is it your job? Your relationships? Your goals? I read all of your comments, and many of the topics I cover come directly from your messages. If you're ready to calm your mind, think clearly, and finally break the cycle of overthinking, then stay with me. Today we're exploring the Japanese system that resets the mind, restores focus, and helps you return to a peaceful state of clarity. Now let's begin. Section 1. Understanding the Shoshin mind. There is a moment in everyone's life when the mind becomes too full. It's packed with beliefs, assumptions, expectations, fears, and past experiences that quietly shape the way we interpret the world. Most people don't even notice this happening. They wake up each day carrying an invisible weight made of old thoughts that no longer serve them. The mind becomes crowded, tense, and noisy. It runs ahead into imagined futures or drifts backward into stored memories. In this state, even simple problems feel complicated. Even small decisions feel heavy. Shoshin is the opposite of that crowded mind. It is the practice of returning to a state where the mind is open again, not empty in the sense of lacking intelligence, but empty in a way that makes space for clarity. Shoshin means approaching each moment without assuming you already know everything. It means letting go of the constant pressure to interpret, judge, and predict. It allows you to experience life the way a beginner does, fresh, curious, receptive. When people hear the phrase beginner's mind, they often misunderstand it. They think it means being naive, inexperienced, or passive. But the beginner's mind has nothing to do with weakness. It is a strength that frees you from the rigid patterns that trap most people in cycles of worry and hesitation. A beginner sees possibilities where an expert sees limitations. A beginner notices details that an experienced mind filters out. A beginner is willing to try, explore, question, and learn. Why does this matter? Because overthinking thrives on one main source: the illusion of certainty. The mind tries to force itself into safety by predicting every outcome, analyzing every variable, and preparing for every possible mistake. It believes that if it gathers enough information, it can finally relax. But this never works. The more information you collect, the more your mind creates new questions. The more you try to prepare, the more you discover things you can't control. Overthinking is not a sign of intelligence. It is a sign of fear trying to disguise itself as logic. Shoshin breaks this cycle in a simple but powerful way. It teaches you that you don't need to predict everything. You don't need to chase certainty. You don't need to cling to old beliefs. Instead, you learn to meet each moment with a soft mind rather than a rigid one. A soft mind is not fragile. It is flexible. It adapts. It listens. It sees clearly. When your mind becomes flexible, the world stops feeling threatening. Possibilities open up. Fear loses its grip. One of the most important aspects of Shoshin is the idea that the mind becomes blind when it thinks it already knows. The more convinced you are that you understand how something works, the less willing you are to look again. You stop asking questions. You stop noticing new details. You stop growing. A rigid mind may feel safe, but it slowly shuts down your potential. Think about how easily adults dismiss ideas because they believe they already understand them. They assume, so they don't explore. They predict, so they don't try. They judge, so they don't listen. Little by little, the world becomes smaller. Options shrink. Creativity dries up. Curiosity fades. The mind becomes a loop of recycled thoughts instead of a living, breathing space capable of new insight. But when you return to the beginner's mind, everything becomes alive again. You start to see new angles, new interpretations, new approaches. You stop clinging to the belief that you must be right or certain. Instead, you embrace the freedom of not knowing. This does not make you careless. It makes you attentive. When you let go of the pressure to know everything, you become fully present. You notice things you've been ignoring for years. You hear your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. You see patterns in your life that you could never understand before. Overthinking is a mind that's too full. Shoshin is a mind that's open enough to breathe. What makes Shoshin so transformative is that it doesn't force the mind to become silent. It does not demand control. It doesn't push thoughts away. Instead, it invites you to allow thoughts without needing to follow them. When the mind learns it doesn't have to cling, thoughts lose their power. They rise, they pass, and you remain centered. This is how clarity returns. Not by fighting your mind, but by softening it. Imagine what happens when a jar of muddy water is shaken. The mud fills the whole jar, making it cloudy. The more you shake it, the less you can see. But if you place the jar down and let it be, the water clears on its own. The mud settles. The clarity returns. The mind works in the same way. Overthinking keeps the mud swirling. Shoshin teaches you to set the jar down and let the mind find its stillness again. Another profound part of Shoshin is recognizing the difference between awareness and interpretation. Most people never experience pure awareness. They live in constant interpretation. Instead of noticing what is happening, they immediately jump to conclusions. Why did this happen? What if it means something bad? What if I fail? What if I'm not ready? Shoshin removes the filter of interpretation. It teaches you to see without adding stories, to observe without judging, to breathe without expecting. When you do this, overthinking has nowhere to attach itself. The mind becomes lighter. Problems become simpler. Decisions become easier. A beginner is not trying to be perfect. A beginner is not trying to control everything. A beginner is just paying attention. And attention is the doorway out of mental chaos. Many people assume that thinking more leads to better decisions. But clarity doesn't come from more thinking. It comes from the right kind of thinking. A mind stuck in loops cannot see anything new. A mind that assumes it already knows cannot learn. A mind that clings to certainty will always struggle with uncertainty. Shoshin teaches you that life is unpredictable. You can't know everything. You can't foresee every detail. You can't eliminate uncertainty. But you also don't need to. When you learn to enter each moment without rigid expectations, the fear of the unknown begins to dissolve. Overthinking loses its foundation. The mind becomes adaptable instead of defensive. This philosophy also allows you to let go of past identity. Most of your overthinking doesn't come from the present moment. It comes from who you believe you are based on your past. If you failed before, your mind tries to protect you by predicting failure again. If you were judged before, your mind tries to prevent future judgment by rehearsing every scenario. If you were hurt before, your mind tries to avoid pain by imagining every danger. But Shoshin encourages a simple truth. You are not the person you used to be. The moment you allow yourself to step into a new identity, the grip of old experiences weakens. You stop carrying outdated stories. You stop reliving old memories. You stop expecting the past to repeat itself. You free yourself to learn, grow, and transform without the weight of who you were yesterday. Finally, Shoshin reconnects you with humility. Not humility as weakness, but humility as openness. The humility to learn. The humility to be wrong. The humility to explore. The humility to start again. Humility protects you from the arrogance of thinking you already see everything clearly. When you remain teachable, you remain adaptable. When you remain adaptable, fear loses its influence. When fear loses its influence, overthinking collapses. Shoshin is not something you master once. It is something you return to again and again. Every day, every moment, every time your mind becomes heavy. It is the art of beginning again, no matter how many times you've stood in the same place before. It is the willingness to see the world with fresh eyes. It is the choice to release the mind from its own limitations. It is the doorway to a life lived with clarity instead of confusion. When the mind becomes open, life becomes open. And when life becomes open, overthinking no longer has a place to hide. Section 2. The roots of overthinking. Overthinking does not appear suddenly. It grows in layers, shaped quietly over time. Most people assume it is simply a bad habit, something the mind does because it has no self-control. But the truth is far deeper. Overthinking comes from the mind trying to protect itself. It is a survival mechanism disguised as analysis. It is fear dressed up as intelligence. It is the mind's attempt to create safety in a world that feels unpredictable and overwhelming. To understand why overthinking becomes such a powerful force, it helps to look at how the mind responds to uncertainty. The mind is wired to prefer stability. It wants clarity, solid answers, and predictable outcomes. It does not like risk or ambiguity. When the mind faces something uncertain, it reacts by trying to think its way into safety. It begins analyzing every possible outcome, predicting every danger, and preparing every response. At first this seems helpful, but soon the mind crosses a line where thinking becomes excessive, repetitive, and uncontrollable. This is where overthinking begins. The first root of overthinking is fear of making a mistake. Many people live with a deep fear of failure, often developed early in life. At some point, someone judged them harshly, or they experienced a painful setback, or they were taught that mistakes define their worth. The mind stores these experiences and begins to believe that every decision must be perfect or everything will collapse. When perfection becomes a standard, the mind never feels ready. It keeps thinking, analyzing, preparing, hoping to avoid the pain associated with failure. But perfection is impossible, and the mind becomes trapped in endless loops of what if I get it wrong? The second root is fear of losing control. Overthinking is the mind's attempt to seize control in situations where control is impossible. Life is unpredictable. Circumstances shift. People change. Plans fail. Opportunities appear and disappear without warning. The mind tries to resist this uncertainty by thinking harder. It believes that if it gathers enough information, it can create a shield against chaos. But no amount of thinking can guarantee stability. Life continues to move in ways the mind cannot anticipate. Overthinking becomes a futile attempt to control the uncontrollable. Another root is fear of judgment. Many people carry a quiet pressure to appear competent, confident, and capable. They fear being misunderstood, criticized, or seen as weak. This creates a constant mental rehearsal. The mind begins to analyze conversations before they happen. It rewrites memories of past interactions. It imagines what others think. It prepares excuses, explanations, and defenses. This mental performance drains energy and deepens insecurity. The more the mind tries to avoid judgment, the more trapped becomes an endless internal dialogue. A fourth root is attachment to identity. Everyone develops a self-image over time. This identity is built from past experiences, beliefs, successes, and failures. But identity can become rigid. When people cling too tightly to who they think they are, they become afraid of anything that challenges that identity. If someone believes they must always be correct, the mind overthinks to avoid being wrong. If someone believes they must always be strong, the mind overthinks to avoid showing vulnerability. If someone believes they must always succeed, the mind overthinks to avoid falling short. Identity, when rigid, becomes a cage that fuels constant mental pressure. There is also the root of past emotional wounds. When someone goes through disappointment, loss, or betrayal, the mind tries to prevent those experiences from repeating. It becomes hypervigilant. It analyzes every detail, every possibility, every signal that something might go wrong. The mind tries to protect itself from pain by expecting it before it happens. But instead of preventing pain, this hyper-alertness creates new suffering. Overthinking becomes the mind reliving old wounds in new situations. A deeper root of overthinking comes from an overload of information. In the modern world, the mind is constantly flooded with data, news, opinions, comparisons, warnings, predictions, advice, and endless streams of noise. The mind is not built to process this much at once. When the mind absorbs too much external input, it becomes cluttered. The boundaries between meaningful and meaningless information blur. The mind becomes confused, overwhelmed, and restless. This overload fuels overthinking because the mind cannot distinguish what matters from what doesn't. Another root is lack of trust, both in oneself and in life. When someone doesn't trust their own judgment, they feel the need to analyze every choice, replay every decision, and question every instinct. They hesitate, doubt themselves, and seek external validation. Without trust, the mind becomes a battlefield of conflicting thoughts. On the other hand, when someone doesn't trust the flow of life, they resist uncertainty. They cling to rigid plans. They panic at unexpected changes. They fear the unknown. Overthinking becomes the mind's attempt to build trust artificially through excessive analysis, but it never works. The final root of overthinking is the illusion of control over the future. The mind believes that by imagining every scenario, it can prevent anything bad from happening. But the future is not controlled by thought. It unfolds through action, presence, and adaptability. When the mind obsesses over the future, it abandons the present. It loses access to clarity, intuition, and awareness. It becomes disconnected from reality and trapped in imaginary scenarios. These roots combine to create the mental storm most people experience daily. The tragedy is that the mind believes it is helping. It believes that by thinking more, it is preventing danger. But the opposite is true. The more the mind overthinks, the more fear grows. The more fear grows, the more the mind overthinks. It becomes a cycle that feeds itself. Understanding the roots of overthinking is powerful because awareness dissolves illusion. When you can see the motivations behind your thoughts, they lose their authority. The mind becomes quieter not because you force it to be silent, but because you finally understand why it behaves the way it does. You stop fighting yourself. You begin to detach from the stories your mind creates. You stop believing that every thought is truth. Shoshin offers a new starting point. It teaches you that the mind doesn't need to cling to old fears. It doesn't need to demand certainty. It doesn't need to perfect every detail. When the mind returns to openness, it stops reacting from fear. It stops overanalyzing. It stops trying to protect itself through excessive thinking. Instead, it becomes calm, aware, and responsive to what is actually happening rather than what might happen. Breaking the cycle of overthinking begins with recognizing the patterns that created it. Every fear, every doubt, every assumption, every expectation becomes visible when the mind adopts a beginner's openness. When the walls of rigid identity soften, the mind finally has space to breathe. The roots of overthinking are deep, but they are not permanent. They are simply patterns that formed over time. And anything that was learned can be unlearned. Anything that was constructed can be dismantled. Anything that was conditioned can be transformed. The beginner's mind does not erase intelligence. It sharpens it. It frees it. It gives you the ability to see clearly without the distortions of fear, judgment, or past identity. When the mind becomes open, the roots of overthinking loosen. Slowly, the entire structure begins to fall apart. And in that space, clarity returns. Confidence returns. Presence returns. life becomes simple again, not because challenges disappear, but because the mind is no longer creating unnecessary suffering. Overthinking is a mind tangled in its own fear. Shoshin is the practice of untangling it, gently, patiently, completely. Section 3. Reclaiming the present moment. The present moment is the only place where life actually happens, yet it is the place the mind visits the least. Most people spend their lives in two worlds that do not exist: the world of memory and the world of imagination. One is the past, filled with stories already completed. The other is the future, filled with stories that may never unfold. The mind drifts between these two realms so often that it forgets how to rest in what is directly in front of it. This is the core reason overthinking feels so exhausting. It pulls attention away from the living moment and into a space where nothing can be changed or controlled. Reclaiming the present moment is not simply a mental exercise. It is a shift in how you experience existence itself. When the mind stops wandering into what was or what might be, it becomes grounded in what is. The senses sharpen. The breath slows. The noise inside the mind begins to quiet. Life becomes less about what you fear and more about what you can actually see, touch, understand, and influence. The present moment is the only place where action is possible. It is the home of clarity, stability, and genuine peace. But the present moment feels unfamiliar to many people because the mind has spent years training itself to avoid it. The mind finds the present uncomfortable not because it is painful, but because it is honest. The present moment reveals things exactly as they are, without distortion. There is no protection in it, no fantasy, no escape. It asks you to experience reality directly. That can be frightening for a mind that relies on control, prediction, and avoidance. Overthinking becomes a distraction that pulls attention away from this raw clarity. The first step in reclaiming the present is recognizing how often the mind leaves it. This awareness alone begins to loosen the grip of overthinking. You start to notice when your thoughts drift into rehearsing conversations, predicting outcomes, replaying mistakes, or worrying about events far beyond your reach. You see how automatic these mental loops have become. You realize they occur not because they are useful, but because the mind has grown comfortable in its discomfort. The mind clings to the past and future because they feel familiar, even though they bring anxiety. The second step is understanding that presence is not something you achieve through force. You cannot order the mind to be present. You cannot demand silence from your thoughts. Presence grows naturally when the mind stops resisting the moment and allows itself to experience what is actually happening. The more gently you approach the present, the more it welcomes you. The more forcefully you try to seize it, the more it slips away. Presence begins with attention. Simple, honest attention. The mind has been trained to pay attention to its thoughts, but it can be retrained to pay attention to life instead. This is not about emptying the mind or stopping thought. It is about shifting the center of awareness away from the internal story and toward the external reality. When you place your attention on something real, your breath, your body, a sound, a sensation, the mind slowly anchors itself. The present moment becomes less distant and more accessible. The third step in reclaiming the present is understanding that attention and awareness are not the same. Attention is where the mind focuses. Awareness is the openness that surrounds that focus. Most people narrow their attention onto their thoughts until those thoughts feel overwhelming. But when awareness expands, thoughts lose their weight. They become small movements within a much wider space. Awareness gives the mind room to breathe. It creates distance between you and your thoughts, making it easier to see them without being controlled by them. This distance is what dissolves overthinking. You no longer identify with every thought. You no longer assume every internal voice is true. Thoughts become what they really are, temporary, inconsistent, and often inaccurate interpretations of reality. With awareness, you see thoughts rising and falling on their own, without your permission, without your need to react. This separation between awareness and thought is one of the deepest forms of freedom. Reclaiming the present is not about achieving a specific emotional state. The present moment is not always calm or pleasant. Sometimes it contains discomfort, uncertainty, or sadness. But even those emotions are easier to handle when you meet them directly instead of imagining them 100 different ways. Anxiety often comes not from the experience itself, but from the stories the mind builds around it. When you return to the present, you step out of those stories and confront reality without exaggeration. Even difficult emotions become manageable because you face only what is real, not what your imagination multiplies. The mind resists the present moment because it fears losing control. But ironically, presence is the only place where real control exists. When your attention is scattered across past and future, you cannot respond effectively to what is happening right now. Your reactions become shaped by fear, habit, or old beliefs. The present moment gives you clarity to act with intention. It removes the noise that clouds judgment. It allows you to see what truly matters and what is not. The path back to presence also requires letting go of urgency. Overthinking thrives in urgency. It convinces you that every decision must be made immediately. Every outcome must be predicted. Every possibility must be controlled. But urgency is rarely real. Most decisions do not require instant reactions. Most situations are not as critical as the mind claims. When you slow down, you see that rushing rarely leads to clarity. The present moment unfolds at its own pace, and it cannot be forced. You must meet it with patience and humility. Another important part of reclaiming the present is learning to trust the moment. Trust does not mean everything will go your way. It means you believe you can handle life as it comes, without needing to mentally prepare for every scenario. This trust dismantles overthinking, because overthinking is fundamentally distrust. Distrust in yourself, in your instincts, and in life itself. When you begin to trust, even a little, the mind stops racing. It realizes it does not need to predict everything to keep you safe. Trust grows when you gather small experiences of presence. Each time you return to your senses, to your breath, to the moment you are actually living, you reinforce a new pattern. The mind learns that the present is not as threatening as it once believed. It learns that clarity arises not from analysis, but from awareness. It learns that the moment contains what you need to navigate it. Reclaiming the present moment also involves accepting imperfection. Overthinking thrives on the illusion that there is always a perfect solution. But the present moment is honest. It shows you that perfection does not exist. Life is full of incomplete information, uncertain outcomes, and unpredictable changes. When you accept this, you stop searching for the ideal answer and start responding to what is real. Imperfection becomes a natural part of life, not a threat to be solved. The final step in reclaiming the present is understanding that the mind cannot be forced into stillness. Stillness is not something you chase. It is something that arrives when you stop feeding the noise. Overthinking loses strength when you stop engaging with it. When you stop fighting the mind and begin observing it, the noise begins to settle on its own. Thought becomes lighter. The present becomes clearer. Action becomes easier. Presence is not an escape from life. It is a return to it. When you reclaim the present moment, you return to the only place where you are truly alive. The mind stops stretching itself across timelines it cannot control. It becomes grounded, steady, and aware. Overthinking begins to fall away not because you defeated it, but because you no longer fuel it. To reclaim the present moment is to reclaim yourself. It is the first real step toward the beginner's mind. And it is the moment where fear begins to dissolve. Section 4. How Shoshin brings you back to the present moment. Overthinking is almost never about the present. It is either about the past you can't change or the future you can't predict. That's why Shoshin feels so refreshing. It brings you back to what is actually in front of you instead of what your mind invents. Think about how most people experience a normal day. Their bodies are in one place, but their minds are somewhere else. They're replaying arguments, overanalyzing mistakes, imagining worst-case scenarios that almost never happen. They wake up already exhausted because their mind ran all night. They move through the day on autopilot, solving imaginary problems that only exist in their heads. Shoshin interrupts this cycle. It pulls you back into direct experience. It helps you see what is actually happening instead of what your fears and assumptions want you to believe. A beginner's mind interacts with the present instead of fighting it. For example, if you're nervous before a conversation, the overthinking mind spirals. What if I say something wrong? What if they judge me? What if it all goes badly? You start trying to predict their reaction, their thoughts, even their facial expressions before the moment arrives. But the beginner's mind simply says, let me see what happens. Not in a careless way, but in a grounded, curious way. It allows reality to unfold without trying to script it. This is why Zen teachers say, when eating, eat. When walking, walk. When listening, listen. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but that's the point. Overthinking adds 10 layers on top of the moment. Shoshin strips those layers away until only the moment is left. And when you're actually in the moment, the mind becomes clear automatically. You don't have to force calm. It happens on its own when you stop dragging the past and the future into every breath. Imagine you're taking a simple walk. An untrained mind fills it with noise. You replay what happened yesterday. You think about tomorrow's responsibilities. You judge everything around you. The walk becomes a background activity while your mind runs its own loud show. Shoshin shifts the attention back to the walk itself. How the air feels. How your steps sound. How your body moves. Not in a mystical way, but in a direct one. You are simply present. And because of that presence, the noise fades. It has nothing to attach to. This is why martial artists, monks, and craftsmen all practice Shoshin. It makes you sharper without making you tense. It keeps you alert without drowning you in thoughts. It teaches you to observe without instantly labeling everything. And in that space between observation and reaction, you find clarity. The truth is that overthinking is just an attempt to control what you don't trust. But the more you try to control, the heavier your mind becomes. Shoshin is the opposite. It doesn't ask you to predict or control. It asks you to experience first. To look, listen, breathe, and let your mind meet the world as it is. When you do this, you notice something important. The present moment is rarely overwhelming. It's usually simple. It's manageable. It's concrete. It's only when the mind leaves the moment that life becomes complicated. Shoshin teaches you to return to the point where everything is simpler. And the more times you return to that point, the more natural it becomes. You begin to trust life again. You begin to trust yourself again. You start noticing how much energy you were wasting trying to prepare for futures that never happened. The moment becomes a place of strength instead of something you rush through. This is the quiet power of Shoshin. It brings you back to the present not with force, but with curiosity. And once you live from that place, the endless spinning thoughts lose their grip. They stop feeling powerful. They stop feeling important. They come and go like clouds, while your awareness remains stable and clear. In the end, Shoshin doesn't erase thought. It simply keeps thought in its proper place. It lets you think when you need to think, and lets you experience when you need to experience. That balance is what ends overthinking, not by shutting down your mind, but by freeing it from everything unnecessary. Section 5. How to practice Shoshin every day. Shoshin is simple, but living it takes intention. It's not a switch you flip. It's a skill you strengthen. The good news is that you don't need hours of meditation or a quiet mountaintop to build it. You only need small, consistent moments where you choose awareness over assumptions. Let's start with the most important point. Shoshin is not something you achieve. It's something you return to again and again. Even Zen masters lose it. Even monks drift into thought. The difference is that they notice the drift sooner. They bring themselves back without judgment. They don't turn it into a story. They don't say, "Why am I still overthinking?" They simply say, "Back to the moment." And they begin again. This ability to begin again is the heart of Shoshin. Here's how you can cultivate it in daily life, even while dealing with noise, stress, responsibilities, and pressure. 1. Start your day with one clear breath. You don't need a morning routine that lasts an hour. You need one conscious breath. That breath is the reset point. When you wake up, your mind usually starts running immediately. Plans, worries, notifications. Shoshin interrupts that rush. Sit for one breath and feel it fully. The inhale, the pause, the exhale, nothing more. This tiny action teaches your mind that the day does not control you. You set the tone. You choose awareness first. And because of that, the mind becomes more stable throughout the day. 2. Practice just noticing. Overthinking comes from reacting without observing. Shoshin reverses the order. Instead of labeling every thought, emotion, or experience, you simply notice it. If a negative thought appears, don't analyze it. Don't fight it. Don't pretend it's not there. Just notice it like you'd notice a cloud drifting across the sky. This skill is powerful because it breaks your identification with the thought. You are not the thought. You are the one noticing the thought. That is the gap where clarity grows. 3. Slow down one everyday activity. Pick something simple. Drinking water, brushing your teeth, tying your shoes, taking a walk. Perform that action with a beginner's mind. Pay attention to the movement, the feeling, the texture, the rhythm. Not in a mystical way, in a direct, simple way. This is how you train presence during ordinary moments. Over time, you'll notice that you become more present even during stressful moments because your awareness is stronger. 4. Ask one beginner's question each day. This is one of the most underrated Shoshin tools. Ask a question that forces your mind to stop assuming and start seeing again. Questions like, what am I missing? What is actually happening right now? What if I don't already know the answer? What is the simplest next step? What would a beginner notice here? These questions disrupt the automatic overthinking loops. They pull you away from conclusions and back to observation. 5. Stop predicting other people's thoughts. A huge portion of overthinking comes from trying to read minds. What did they mean? What if they think this? What if they judge me? Shoshin dissolves this pattern by reminding you that you cannot know someone else's thoughts unless they tell you. Assumptions are inventions, not facts. The beginner's mind waits for the actual moment instead of rehearsing it. It does not script conversations in advance. It does not try to pre-interpret expressions or tone. It simply shows up and sees what happens. This makes social interactions lighter and more authentic. 6. Focus on action instead of analysis. Overthinking is almost always the result of wanting perfect certainty before taking a step. But Shoshin does not chase perfect certainty. It chooses one clear action, not the ideal action, not the perfect plan, just the next step that moves you forward. When the mind thinks it needs to solve everything at once, remind yourself, I only need to take one step. That is enough. The beginner's mind walks the path without demanding guarantees. It learns from the process. It adjusts. It grows. Action creates clarity. Overthinking kills momentum. 7. Use the reset to zero method. Whenever your mind starts spiraling, pause and tell yourself, start from zero. It's a practice used by many martial artists and archers. They return to zero before each attempt. No matter how the last moment went, the new moment begins fresh. No story, no judgment, no pressure. This resets your mind instantly. It keeps the present moment clean. 8. Remove labels when you can. The mind loves labels. Good, bad, hard, easy, annoying, boring, impossible. Once you put a label on something, the experience becomes rigid. Shoshin removes labels so you can see the moment without bias. Instead of saying, this is annoying, say, this is what I'm experiencing. Instead of this person is difficult, say, let me understand what's happening. Instead of this is too hard, say, let me try one small piece. This doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you don't distort reality with instant judgment. When you drop labels, you drop resistance. When you drop resistance, you drop overthinking. 9. Give your attention fully to one thing at a time. Overthinking is fueled by split attention. Your body is doing one thing, your mind is doing another. Shoshin restores unity. When you work, just work. When you talk, just talk. When you rest, just rest. You can still multitask when necessary, but presence remains your foundation. 10. Accept that every moment is new. This is the core truth of Shoshin. Most overthinking comes from assuming you've seen this moment before or predicting how it will unfold. But the beginner's mind recognizes each moment as fresh. It has never existed. It will never exist again. You cannot understand it by projecting memories or fears onto it. Once you accept that the moment is new, you stop dragging the past into it. You stop projecting the future onto it. You meet it directly. And when you meet it directly, clarity replaces confusion. Why Shoshin works? Shoshin works because it removes the mental weight that creates overthinking. You're not trying to control everything. You're not trying to predict everything. You're not trying to cling to certainty. You're simply seeing what is in front of you. And when you see clearly, the mind calms naturally. You begin making decisions from clarity, not fear. You stop replaying old mistakes. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios. You stop carrying problems that haven't even happened. Shoshin frees you from the noise by grounding you in what is real. Not what you remember, not what you fear, not what you assume, only what is happening right now. And this practice does something even deeper. It restores trust. You trust your ability to handle the moment. You trust your ability to adapt. You trust that you don't need to overthink to stay safe or in control. That trust is what makes the mind quiet. That trust is what ends overthinking. Shoshin is not a theory. It is a practice, a way of living with awareness, curiosity, and presence. Every time you return to the moment with a beginner's mind, you weaken the habit of overthinking. You loosen the grip of fear. You open a space inside yourself where peace, clarity, and calm can grow. Most people will live their entire lives inside the noise of their own minds. You don't have to. You can choose a different way. You can choose Shoshin. You can choose clarity. You can choose presence. You can choose a mind that is open, steady, and free.